Welcome to my tutorial on how to do the Dollhouse room dedicated to Rudolph and the Island of Misfit Toys. This was one of my all-time favorite Christmas shows, so it really makes me smile every time I see this room, and it's so easy to do. So let's get started. All you need is a little paint and paper. My original dollhouse came from Goodwill. I cut out some of the areas to make the rooms larger, but it made a huge mess. But I cleaned it up, I gave it a nice coat of white paint, and then I took a green shingle material that I painted bright green, and I glued it to the edges and along the areas that looked pretty bad from the cutting. I added a red roof, and it was good to go. My next step was to add the wallpaper and the window and drapes. So I measured the room to get the length of the wallpaper, and it gave me a little bit more flexibility to use an entire sheet of paper rather than just side panels for the back, so that no matter what size the window came out, I was still okay. I found this book of construction paper for only $3 at a thrift store, and the paper is pretty thick, so I figured I could use it for many different projects. I chose two different colors just to give it some nice contrast for the barn look. I chose the one I wanted for the back wallpaper, and after taking my measurements, cut out one large sheet and glued it to the back wall. The next step was to find my window. I had the measurement of approximately 5 inches. I then went to the internet on my phone and typed in free printable window winter. The key word here is printable because I didn't want to look through 100 examples of real windows. In this case, I just wanted windows that I could print out that were free. There were many beautiful examples. I chose one and saved it to my phone. A tip for you is to take all of your printing projects to Kinko's. It is really a cost-effective way to print something out with the cost of ink nowadays. And another benefit of Kinko's is that I saw when I went to print this out, it was going to be huge, way too big for my room. I reduced it down to about 50%, which gave me the correct dimensions. I was a little short of 5 inches, but that worked. I printed it out on regular paper. You don't need an expensive glossy thing. It's on the wall in the back in a very cost-effective way. Here's an example of another window, so you can follow along on how I did this. After cutting this picture out, I noticed the borders of the window are not even, but it doesn't matter because the curtains are going to be covering them. The next step is to measure the width and length of your window. This was 3.5 inches wide, and I want my curtains to look semi-realistic, so I'm going to double that measurement. So I'm making each panel of the curtain 3.5 inches wide, and I'm giving myself an extra inch in length so that I make sure I cover the bottom of that window. I then folded my paper into pleats. An inside tip is that when you're making curtains like this, make sure you fold that outside edges over just a little bit so that when you're looking at the paper, you don't see a raw edge. It makes it look more realistic like curtains. Your pleats don't need to be perfect. You want this to look like a natural curtain hanging. I then cut a small strip from the leftover paper to make my tie back for my curtain. I gave it a little fold so that it gives it a more three-dimensional look when I glue it to the wall. For my cornice, I took the leftover paper and measured 5.5 inches, giving me an inch on each side of the window, which was 3.5 inches wide, by 1 inch deep. I then cut it out. I want the cornice to stand away from the window, so that extra inch that I gave myself on each side of this, I measured off and drew a line. I then folded that in on itself so that when I glue it up to the wall, it actually stands an inch out from the wall itself. I've only taped this example together to give you an idea of what it can look like. It'll look much better once you've used hot glue and actually put it up on your wall. I took the same paper left over, cut a little rectangle, glued it to the floor as a carpeting. I added a table and a little shelf that I painted to look like it matched, a Christmas tree, and I was set. The characters themselves all came in a little set. I got it at an online option, pretty cheap, but they're perfect for what I needed, and those seemed to be the right size. You have to keep that in mind when you're looking at things, the perspective of will they fit nicely within your dollhouse. I added a few little Christmas boxes. I found a little train that I painted the same color as the train from the cartoon. I added a table of gift wrap just to give it more of that Christmas feel. My little character came unglued, but I don't use super glue, but I do use an adhesive to glue my pieces down because a unique feature of this dollhouse is that it can fold up. By gluing the figures down, it allows me to close up the dollhouse at the end of the Christmas season, box it up, and when I open it up next year, all the pieces are in place. I don't have to redo the entire thing. For the light in this room, I added a portable battery-operated light that I can move from place to place. In a future video, I'll be converting this entire dollhouse to electricity. So each time I want the lights on, I don't have to go around and turn each one on one by one. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial and can see how easy it is to create some of these rooms. In my playlist, I've broken down a few other rooms. Please click subscribe so you can find me again. This is Alicia with the channel Doing Older, and thank you for watching.